Hey everybody, Nicki Minaj here, and today I'm going to explain what happened at the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. Now, we know Barbies don't talk about religion, politics, or your boyfriend's diarrhea. You know, that's when their breath and their ass doesn't smell very good. But today, somebody's got to break you the news. The big thing going on in France in 1572 was the religious wars. On the one side, you had the Catholics, and they like to wear flashy colors like me. On the other side, you've got the Protestants, or who we're calling today Huguenots, as they were called in France. The Huguenots wore dark colors like black and brown and more black. The Catholics and the Huguenots didn't like each other at all. Kind of like me and a certain person who shall remain unnamed, but her name is Mariah, at all. I mean, they did not like each other. That's why the war between the Catholics and the Huguenots, After a few years, unlike us, they decided to call a truce. But sometimes peace doesn't make people any happier than war. And both the Catholics and the Huguenots were brooding and bitter during the peace. Really bitter. Enter Catherine de Medici. De Medici. She's the queen mom and the power behind the throne. Sometimes she's the power in front of the throne, if you know what I mean, because her son Charles was so easy to push around. Catherine decides, I know how I'll put an end to this war. I'll marry my Catholic daughter Marguerite to the Prince of the Huguenots. This guy, Henry of Navarre. Because the best way to get people to stop hating each other is invite them to a wedding. Yeah, that's it. Marry your enemies. That always works. What was Henry's first response? He said, sure, I've always wanted to be second in line to the king, even if I would be the first Protestant king in this hugely Catholic country, and all the Catholics would hate me. But Henry wasn't born yesterday. He's not going to enter hostile Paris all by his lonesome. He's going to bring a few friends, several thousand of his friends. Henry and all his friends entered Paris armed to the teeth, and the Parisians are wondering, hey, who brings weapons to a wedding? Well, these guys obviously never grew up in South Central LA or the Bronx, because we all know who doesn't go to a wedding with weapons. With Henry is Admiral. Hey, that's me. With Henry is Admiral de Coligny, the head of the Huguenots. Coligny is Henry Navarre's best friend. He is also King Charles' best friend. Everybody loved Coligny but the Catholics. They could not stand him, and everybody hated him, but no one hated him more than the Duke of Guise. Guise is not happy with this wedding of Catholic and Huguenot. Nuh-uh, he thinks he should be king. Because, you know, it's good to be Duke, but Duke just doesn't have that same ring to it. Myself, I prefer Queen, but I digress. Well, it's wedding day, and what does Henry Navarre do? He says, I ain't going into that church. If I go into that church, you're going to make me eat the blood and flesh of Christ. And I can't do that because I'm a vegan and a Protestant. And that whole thing about attending Mass, forget about it. Ain't gonna happen. So Henry and all of the Huguenots stand outside the church, and he takes his vows from there. Kind of a pissy little thing, isn't he? Margaret's thinking, Mom, what the hell did you get me into? By now the Catholics have had it. It's a wedding, for Christ's sake. You won't enter a church for your own wedding. This one Catholic, Morvert, he takes out his musket and shoots Coligny. But Coligny doesn't get dead. He doesn't get dead. He only gets wings. The Huguenots are ticked off anyway. They say Morvert is just a pawn, a paid hitman. The real assassin is Catherine. King Charles says, "Don't worry, I'm going to find the real assassin." But the Huguenots were not impressed. They say, "We think your mother did this, and furthermore, we don't like you." And Charles says, "Hey, what did I do?" Catherine pays a visit to her son. "You know what Navarre is thinking?" she says. "I'm second in line to the throne, and if something really awful were to happen to Charles and his brother, I would rule France." "How did the king let this happen?" What? Me?" says Charles. "But this was all your idea." True, but I'm just the queen, Mum. You're the king. You signed off on this." Well, Charles didn't like this. So the queen, Mum, says, "You only have one choice. You have to kill all the Huguenots before they kill you." "How am I going to kill all the Huguenots?" "Not you personally, you twit. You just sign this writ of condemnation and your problems are solved." So Charles signs the writ. Guise takes the writ to the admiral and says, "You're a dead man, Coligny." "I got Charles' autograph on this death warrant," Coligny says. "But I thought Charles had a guy crush on me." Then the Duke stabs the admiral and throws his body out into the street. Remember this, kids. Never throw the Admiral of Coligny out the window. You get your friend and you get a shovel and you go out into the desert. Never mind. You just don't throw him out the window, that's all. Well, the Parisians see the body of Coligny. They get on their cell phones and they call up all their friends. Actually, these were 16th century phones and they were called bells. But you really don't have to text. Game on, chumps. Everybody knew what the bells meant. From then on, it was just a free-for-all. Everybody was grabbing and stabbing and looting and shooting and slashing and gashing and cutting and strutting. And for all, it looked like it could have been South Central LA. Well, the messy massacre started on St. Bartholomew's Day, but went on and on. Paris had a lot of haters. Soon everyone in France was picking up a scythe, you know, like a pitchfork or a blade or something to cut down their neighbor. But in a Christianly brother love kind of way, they were smiting each other like crazy. Eventually, all the weapons went blunt. People decided to stop killing each other so they could do other things like eat, sleep, and procreate. Thousands of innocent sock puppets died during the massacre, Catholic and Protestant alike. You see, when a sock puppet dies, no one can tell what religion it was. You couldn't even tell what sex I was there, could you? King Charles went completely insane and died of the Furies at age 23, and his brother Henry became the new king. But Henry angered the Catholics for not hating on the Protestants enough, so they killed him. And then Henry of Navarre became the newer king. Everything the Catholics had feared had come to pass. The king was a freaking Huguenot. But this Henry's pretty savvy. He converts to Catholicism, and the worst fears of the Huguenots come to pass. Everyone in France is unhappy. And the story ends the way it started, just with a lot less sock puppets. I would like to thank all the Bobs for making this video happen. If you want to hear more epics, more stories of epic failure, listen to the Podcast of Doom on iTunes, Stitcher, and Blueberry. Leave a comment on Facebook, iTunes, or at the www.thepodcastofdoom.com. And don't forget to tell them that Nicki the Sock Puppet sent you. Ta-ta, Barbies. And not Klaus Barbie. You know, Barbie. Barbie dolls.